Good morning, everybody. It is always great to see you on a fine Sunday morning. And I'm just going to do some postings here on our Facebook page so we can reach more of our members. And I would like to first, while I do this, start off with a reflection around peace, as this is something we'll be talking about today. What does peace mean to you? Okay. We are live, so welcome again, everybody. It is always, as usual, great to see you here. Welcome, Sonia. Welcome, Yvonne. Really great to be here with you all. And I'd like to start off by, for those of you who don't know or are not aware of, our dear FSS, we have a program called FSS Fraternal Assistance, and this is open to every single one of us that are in need of somebody to talk. Sometimes we just need somebody to talk to, somebody who listens to us, and then also somebody who can help us with some enlightenments. So we'd like to offer you this. We have this fraternal assistance here. If you'd like to book us an appointment with us, you can reach out to us via many of our social media or by emailing our welcoming at fsscalgary.ca email. So to start off, since we are talking about peace today, we'll be reading and starting to harmonize our thoughts and feelings by reading a book called The Way, the Truth, and the Life by Emmanuel. And this is chapter 53, entitled Peace. And I just noticed this is in Portuguese. I apologize. I'm gonna have to change this to an English text. Give me 1 second here. And we'll be then reading a text from the book called Our Daily Bread. Not this one that you're seeing here on the screen. And it's Our Daily Bread, which is also a book from Francisco Cândido Xavier, Through the Spirit Emmanuel. And I believe it's text 47 from Our Daily Bread. And let's go to 47. Okay. And this text is called The Difficulty of Pleasing Others. And it's Emmanuel here brings a reflection around a passage from Paul, when Paul wrote to the Galatians on chapter 1, verse 10, when he said, "If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ." And Emmanuel brings us a reflection about that when he says the sincere disciples of the gospel would do well to preoccupy themselves with their own endeavors and conscientiously accomplish the tasks which they were called upon to fulfill daily, learning to overlook their rational opinions of the world. The great multitude will not know how to display warmth and admiration except to those who supply their demands and whims. In the conflicts which the student will no doubt encounter on the path, the faithful apprentice of Jesus will be a different type of worker who instinctively the multitude will not comprehend. Great inexperience and lack of vigilance will be apparent to the messenger of the glad tidings, who shows concern regarding how the world likes or dislikes him. When he finds himself in materially wealthy and prosperity, in which the master confers him great economic comfort, some malicious neighbors will inquire as to the cause of his successful triumphs. But when he encounters poverty and difficulties, people will attribute these problematic experiences as a retreat in the face of the sublime ideals embraced. So it is indispensable to strive on behalf of human beings as one who is aware that the integral tasks belong to Jesus Christ. The world will eventually recognize the great efforts of the sincere devotee. However, that will come at another time when its evolvement permits. On many occasions, the popular opinion is equivalent to that of infantile gatherings who do not tolerate highly inspired educators on the subject of order and involvement, work and achievement. Let therefore the sincere laborer of the Christ strive without concern for the erroneous judgments of the gathering. Jesus knows who he is, and that is all that matters. So let us now close our eyes as we start with a small and quick prayer where we gather our thoughts, we gather our feelings, and we also gather the love of Jesus within us. We invite him with open hearts to be here with us today. We thank him for being available for us, for always being there for us. And we ask him to help us be inspired, all of us today, that Jesus' love is able to not only reach our hearts, but also instill thoughts, deposit seeds of thoughts in our minds today, so we can reflect about peace, so we can see ourselves as capable spirits to build peace within us and around us. To our guardian angels, thank you for all the effort that you made for all of us to be here today. And may we find communion with you and with God, so much so that our conscience can be aligned, that we can listen to you, we can be inspired by you, we can listen to your intuitions, and in that we can thank God for giving us so much help and so many tools that bring us closer and closer to love. Thank you, and so be it. So thank you all for being here, and there might be some background noise today, but hopefully I can speak loud enough that it won't distract you. And as always, we like to bring Spiritist texts to our talk. It's the basis of our talk. And we also like to start with looking at Jesus and thinking about Christ, who's that spirit that not only brought us our guiding lights, our compass, but also showed us how to use it. And in our topic today, in building peace in us, this is based on a few talks by Artur Valadares, where he interprets the book by Chico Xavier called Calm, or Calma in Portuguese. And this book it's a great book. It's a short book. There's roughly 33 chapters, 1 or 2 pages each. And they're very concise and practical texts. And they're all related to calm. And I chose this book because it is something that I've been working on for quite a while. And I believe it's a virtue that is needed all around us. So today, this is part 2. We've already done part 1 a month ago, where we talked about serenity and patience, which was chapter 5. And today, we'll be talking about chapter 8, which is called Peace in Us. And this book is in Portuguese. I translated all of it. And I chose to use peace in us. Technically, the usual word would be on us, peace on us. But I wanted to reflect what Emmanuel's talking about here. So I chose peace in us to highlight that peace is something that's not simply bestowed upon us, but peace is something that can be built from within. Hence the word in us. So if we start off with this idea and this notion that peace is a virtue, it used to be the virtue of our month of January here at FSS. Peace is a virtue that, yes, we can build it. We can build with practice, with exercise every single day in our lives. So if we think we don't have peace in us, that's okay. That's why we're here. And it is something that God has given us all the tools so we can build it. And Emmanuel is going to help us through peace in this text when he will enlighten us a few things about peace. And if we think about what calm is, which is the title of the book, calm simply is when we are able to conserve peace within us. And that's why this brings us to this text, peace in us, where there are a couple of ways that we can perceive peace. There's two ways mostly, actually, that we can perceive peace. One of them being a peace that is external, meaning we think that we can achieve peace when our life no longer has any difficulties, when our life is tranquil, when our life is easy. And this is a notion of peace that is built upon and is dependent on the external. And we know that the external is something very volatile. So, and that most of it we have no control over. So if our peace is linked and dependent on something that we have no control over, it means that we cannot build peace because it's dependent on something from the outside. And Jesus, he told us that he will leave us with his peace, not the peace of the world. So the peace of the world, the analogy that he was talking about, is this peace that we believe we can have once the outside is with no difficulties, when the outside is easy, when there's no torment, when there's no tribulations. However, Christ left us his peace, and his peace is the peace that we'll be talking about today, which is the peace that we can build within. It's the peace that we have control over, and that is why it's something that we can build, because it relies on us, not on the outside. And this is what he left us. And there are many examples around this peace that we profoundly develop within us, because as we always bring here at FSS, it's a virtue. And if it is a virtue, it's something that God wants us to develop. So that means that God's mercy will help us develop it. We've been given all the tools to develop it. And the interesting piece that we can bring from a passage from Christ in the Sermon on the Mount, at the very end of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 7, it's when Jesus is talking about the wise and the foolish builders. When he says that the foolish builders who build their house on sand will be affected by the storms, will be affected by the water, by the torrents, and their house will fail, will perish. And then he says the other ones, the wise builder, is the builder who builds their house on a base of rock, in a rock foundation. And that house is immune to the outside. If there's rain, if there's torments, if there's torrents around it, the house will still stand. We can bring this analogy that Christ brought us to peace. If we're foolish builders, we'll be building our peace on this basis of sand, where if there's a torment, if there's a difficulty around us, our peace will tremble, our peace will fail. Whereas when we build our peace in a basis, in a strong foundation, being the foundation of Christ, that peace, because it's built within us, it will not perish in case difficulties come into our lives. So this is what Christ was telling us in the Sermon on the Mount. And this is what we'll discuss here today. And what would be to build peace in a solid rock, in a solid foundation? Well, it would be to build the virtues that Christ taught us to. The one of love, the one of forgiveness, the one of patience, the one of mercy, the one of meekness, the one of kindness, and so many of these pillars that can only help us build our internal peace. So without further ado, let's actually start reading the text from Emmanuel. And he starts off this passage or this text by saying that the peace in us does not result from external circumstances, but from our tranquility of conscience and the accomplished duty. And it is necessary to note that the accomplished duty is the result of comprehending. So here is a very interesting reflection that Emmanuel brings to us, again, to highlight that the peace, it does not rely on external circumstances. So peace is something that's built within. And he says that peace comes from the tranquility of our conscience. In Portuguese, what we say is consciência tranquila. So it's when our minds are tranquil, our minds are serene. And when are our minds serene, when are our consciences serene? He tells us that too. He says, when we have the sense that we accomplished our duties. So then lies the reflection, what does it mean to accomplish our duties? What duties? What is he talking about? And then he says that the accomplished duty is the result of comprehending. We can reflect quite a bit about results, about comprehension, about understanding. And one reflection that we always like to bring is that we can achieve comprehension, we can achieve understanding when we take the lesson from every opportunity in our lives. As broad as this sounds, everything that we go through life, be it something that brings us joy, be it something that brings us sadness, everything that we go through life is an opportunity for us to learn something, to understand something. And when we do that, when we extract the lesson that God was trying to teach us, we can say that we've accomplished our duty. And so let's say that we had, like we have many duties throughout the day, but let's say that we were able to accomplish one of them. So I would invite all of us here today to, for example, tonight, before falling asleep, that we can reflect upon the duties that we have today. And we can reflect upon one duty that we actually accomplished. So one lesson that we actually learned, that we were actually able to extract the knowledge from that. And just think about it and realize, okay, I accomplished that duty, and see what happens. It's interesting. When we realize that we accomplished our duty, we will feel tranquility in our conscience, because we will feel the serenity that comes when we did a good job, when we accomplished something, and that will make us feel peace. So it's a good exercise that we can all do to see. And as far as bringing examples around this passage around peace, Arthur Valadares, who's the one who did this interpretation, he brings us the example of Joana de Cusa. For those of you who don't know, this comes from the book The Good News by Francisco Xavier. It's a very famous book from him, and I believe it's chapter 15, entitled Joana de Cusa, when there's the story about her, and towards the very end, there are spoilers, but towards the very end, she's about to be burned alive together with her son, and those who are setting her on fire, they say, renounce Jesus, and she says that she won't. And then they ask her, so this is what your master has taught you, how to die. And Joanna, in all her beauty and in finding that peace within her, she was able, while her body and her son's body was being burned, she was able to find that peace within her and to reply, not only to die, but also to love you. So in that moment, you could see that even though she was being burned alive, she could still find peace within her. So talk about external and internal peace, right? If Joanna only paid attention to external peace, she will not be peaceful at that time because she was being burned alive. But because she listened to Christ's words, because she built that peace within her, even though she was being burned alive, she was still able to find peace and reply with love. The other one is Paul of Tarsus in his second letter to the Corinthians. He says that our glory is a testament to how tranquil our conscience is. So the amount of glory that we can bring to our lives is proportional to how much our conscience is tranquil. The tranquility of our conscience dictates how much of God's glory we bring into our lives. Emmanuel tells us that happiness is equal to how much peace we have in us. And it's interesting to bring us to the reflection around happiness, because André Luis, in his book Action and Reaction, which is, I believe, the 9th book in his series, towards the very end, I believe it's chapter 18, when Druso is teaching him and Ilario about the divine justice, and he says that it is the true happiness, happiness will only be true when it has the approval from our conscience. What does that mean? Is we will only feel true happiness, that fills our heart and builds us character. It builds us to become better people. This true happiness can only be felt when what we did is approved by our conscience. So if we do something, for example, to hurt somebody, and that for some reason brings us happiness, that is not true happiness, because that will not be approved by our conscience. That is simply euphoria, but it's not happiness. That will go away quick. Whereas true happiness comes and it changes us a little bit. And so when we bring more and more teachings about happiness, we can start to see how happiness and peace are very close together. In question 922 from the Spirit's book, the Spirits say that happiness is peace of conscience and faith in the future. So again, it is that peace of mind that brings us happiness. So happiness is not a place that we're trying to reach. Rather, happiness is a way It's the way that we walk the journey. We can walk the journey being happy at times, having some peace, having some serenity, or not. And that is our choice. It's funny because in a couple other questions on the Spirits book, in question 926, the spirits say that the more we multiply our needs, the more we multiply our necessities, the more we are complicating our happiness. Where they say the one that has the least amount of necessities is the richest. So those of us who put the least amount of necessities, futile necessities, will be the most happy, because we're not complicating our happiness by adding more and more demands to our lives. Good morning, Anna. Great to see you here. And so if we keep going on the text about Emmanuel, the second one, he starts to explain us a little bit more about what he meant when he said comprehending. So he said, comprehending means, in essence, excusing the people around us and the opposition they make to us, and forgetting the events that show us adverse, so that we can remain faithful to the task at hand. This is pretty important, because this is where Emmanuel is starting to show us the importance of forgiveness. So he's saying that comprehending, which is what we just talked about, in other words, extracting the lesson from our day-to-day lives, extracting the lessons from the things that we go through in life. He's saying that it, in essence, means excusing the people around us. It means forgiving people around us. It's a big portion of our ability to evolve is how much we are able to forgive, our ability to forgive. He says that if someone does something to us to offend us, and we hold on that offense, we hold on to the anger, those things, they are taking our focus away from developing peace, from developing love, from developing serenity. So that grudge that we hold against those who are our trespasses, they simply take away our focus. They derail us from the task at hand, like he says at the very end. The way for us to remain faithful to the task at hand. And what is the task at hand? The task at hand is for us to develop our virtues, right? To develop our love, to develop our peace, to develop our ability to forgive, and so on and so forth. So for us to remain faithful to these things, we must not, or we should not, let ourselves be derailed by anger, by holding a grudge, by hatred towards somebody else. So much so that Christ, in one of his last lessons, and in one of his last things that he said while his human body was alive, when he was on the cross, about to die, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." So you can see there the lesson on forgiveness. And in doing so, Christ was peaceful. And Emmanuel even says that forgiveness is the antibiotic of the soul. It prevents all the ailments from hatred, from anger, from taking away our love. And so we'll start to reflect more about forgiveness as we go throughout today. But this is one of the main things that Emmanuel is trying to get across here. Then he says, do not be troubled by the censure or criticism of others in the performance of the obligations that life assigns to you. Because if you accept your own commitments for the general good, these commitments concern yourself and not those who observe you, not always with logic and security. So this is Emmanuel's calling to us to not rely on censure or criticism, or not be affected by censure and criticism. A lot of times, these things are worthy of being reflected just to make sure that we're able to course correct in case we are doing something that we ought not to be doing. But the reflection here is so that we are not doing things so we can please others. If we start to want to please everybody, this is Artur bringing a reflection. If we're trying to always please other people, we ought to watch out, because in pleasing everybody, we will likely be malleable. We will likely be swaying from our path with Christ. We'll likely be changing our focus or lacking our authenticity when we're trying to please everybody. And if we have that need, one reflection that always helps me with this is that Christ, who was the most pure or the purest spirit to live amongst us, was not able to please everyone. To this day, he's not able to please everyone, and he is Christ. So if we think we're going to achieve that, that is our ego talking. And let us focus on our authenticity as opposed to wanting to please everybody. And the next one that Emmanuel brings is again along the same lines when he says, in any uplifting activity, it is helpful to remember that the ideas and words, action and attitudes of others belong to them, not to us. So here Emmanuel is starting us, or is bringing us the reflection about judgment. And it's something that I hold on dear to my heart. It's learning how to judge less and to love more. And he says that in here, right, those actions, those words, those attitudes of others belong to them, not to us. So who are we to judge? Christ himself did not judge. There is that passage from the gospel in John when Christ invites us to reflection. Cast the first stone, those who have never sinned. So there's a reflection. Who are we to judge if we have all this baggage that we brought with us? If we still sin, who are we to judge? And sin in the sense of doing something and missing the target. So doing something that is not correct. And in that passage from the gospel, after Christ said that, he got close to the lady and made her reflect and look around. And he said, see, those all around us, they don't condemn you anymore. And then Christ said, nor do I. So Christ did not condemn her. even though she had her issues with sexuality. So who are we to condemn somebody if Christ doesn't condemn us? So that's a good reflection for all of us to have, right? And in some other time we can develop this a little bit more, but in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 10, item 21, there is a reflection around speaking up when we see something that is not correct, when that thing that is not correct is going to affect other people. So then, yes, we should bring up that something is happening, but not from a sense of judging or reprehending the person who's doing something wrong, but from a place of love, but from a place of serenity, being able to do that in a caring and loving way, with compassion, not with judgment. Because judgment is something that we say in English called, it's a slippery slope. Judgment is not an instinct. I forget the word now. But oh yeah, it is. Sorry, it is instinct. So judgment, it's one of those things that we actually talked about this on Monday. Judgment is not a feeling. Judgment is an instinct that we have from where we were animals and we have become humans. So in our evolution, part of what we do is we're transforming our instincts into feelings. So we're transforming all those instincts that were helping us guard our lives. We're transforming them into something that will become more loving. For example, instinct, judgment was something that we used to make sure that we would be free from danger. So we would judge everything around us and try to risk it. Is this going to risk my life? Is this going to, or is this not going to risk my life? So it was something that we practiced quite often. But now that we are transforming our thoughts and our feelings, we realize that we can still analyze our surroundings, but we don't have to judge. We can analyze it. And judgment, again, it is a slippery slope, like we talked about, because it can make us feel good. Unfortunately, judgment, when we have a lack of self-esteem, when you have a lack of self-love, judgment can bring us a feeling where we put the others down so we feel greater. And it is a slippery slope because it is something addictive. So reminding ourselves that we are not judges of others. And we will discuss a little bit more about this later on. When here he says that in the criterion of reciprocity, it is fair to remember that it is not lawful for us to violate this or that person with opinions and measures that tend to suffocate their personality. So here again, another reflection on judgment. It is not lawful for us to suffocate somebody's personality by giving our opinions and our measures towards them, in other sense, to judge them. Again, judgment is an easy place to go, right? And one of the reasons why, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is that no one can know what we go through. Because we are independent beings with many lives in our baggage, we cannot know what the person has gone through. We don't know what the person is feeling. We don't know what's driving that person to do what they're doing. So how can we judge them if we don't know what's happening? And Christ, who knew everything that was happening, with people didn't judge. So who are we to judge if we don't know what's driving them? And this can be a slippery slope, especially with family, especially with friends, people that we know really well. We think that we know them really well, that we can understand why they're doing something, but in truth is we can't. Even though we think we might know why they're doing things, this does not give us the right to judge because we don't know what fully goes on. Sometimes we don't even know why we do some things, right? And in a great passage here that has touched me quite a bit, and I invite you all to listen to this. There's something that was actually brought by my yoga teacher. There is a Catholic priest called Gregory Boyle. He's American. And he's actually the founder of something that's called the Homeboy Industries, which is the world's largest gang intervention and rehabilitation program. He says one thing that throughout his life, by working with gang intervention and preaching the words of God, he says that the ultimate measure of health in any community might well reside in our ability to stand in awe at what folks have to carry rather than in judgment of how they carry it. This is something really powerful and something that touched me deeply. So I'll read it again. He's saying the ultimate measure of health in any community might well reside in our ability to stand in awe at what folks have to carry rather than in judgment of how they carry it. So here he puts this in a great way, because he puts this as a choice that we can make. We can stand in awe at what somebody has to carry, as opposed to judge of how they carry it. For example, in a very rudimentary example, Christ carrying the cross. I could stand in awe of him carrying the cross. Oh, I can judge him why he is carrying the cross, or how he's carrying the cross is not carrying the correct way, and so on and so forth. Exactly, Anna. Thank you. Judgment implies a condemnation, right? We're condemning somebody for doing it wrong in our senses. And I guess I forgot to explain what stand in awe means. This is an expression in English, and it means, for those of us who are in Canada, this is a great example. For example, when we go out to the mountains and we see like an amazing view and we stand there in awe. We are like, it takes our breath away when we look at the grandeur, when we look at the capacity that lies with others to create this amazing scenery that we're seeing. So stand in awe is when we're literally, we're taken aback and we look at that with praise. And it's interesting because one of my favorite researchers and social worker, she's called Brené Brown, and in her latest book called Atlas of the Heart, she explains to us that this ability to stand in awe, there's research that she brings that talks about how standing in awe makes us more likely to be altruistic. Isn't that amazing? And I'd like to spend some time to reflect about this. So those of us who practice standing in awe at things and people, we are more likely to be altruistic. We're more likely to do good. We're more likely to have compassion. We're more likely to love. On the other side of the coin, those of us who enjoy judgment, those of us who judge all the time, what are we more likely to do? We're more likely to develop bitterness. We're more likely to develop pessimism. We're more likely to develop separation. We're more likely to develop disharmony, and so on and so forth. So there lies a choice for us. We can stand in awe. We can practice to stand in awe and be more altruistic, or we can choose to judge and be bitter and spread disharmony. So again, I like the way Gregory puts this, because he puts this in a way of it being a choice. And Sonia says that I have been learning that judgment is also a process that happens because we're keeping our focus on outside of ourselves when Jesus invites us to build God's realm inside us. Absolutely, Sonia. Thank you for that beautiful reflection. A lot of us have certainly a difficulty to go within, because of many things that we might bring within us, but because we're not courageous enough to go within and finding us with all our goods and bads, we choose to judge others. We choose to stay outside instead of going within, and that's something that Sunni is bringing to us, is that we fall into the realms of judgment when we're trying to prevent from going within and from loving ourselves. And and to keep going, I'm going to have to speed up a little bit here. So on paragraph 6, the manual says discussions help in many cases of obscure matters or uninformed companions, but serving others, giving them the best of us, is the decisive argument to clarify the solution agents to any problem. This is amazing, and it ties even with the fraternal assistance program that we have. A lot of times, dialogue might not be the best way, might not be what the person is needing at that time. You know, when somebody's suffering, when somebody's when they're needing help, a lot of times all they need is somebody to listen to them without judgment. Somebody that can hold them dear with compassion and not judgment. Somebody who, instead of saying, "I told you so," will say, "It's okay." So Emmanuel says that in times of a heated discussion, or in times when we're asked for help, serving others and giving them our best is the agent for any problem. So that's something that we can reflect upon when we're arguing next time at work or in the family or wherever it may be. And so then he says, in order to collaborate in the interest of the good of all, it is imperative to forget about what inductions to selfishness makes us hesitate in the face of the obligations that life sets for us. So here, Emmanuel calls us to action and asks us to reflect about how selfishness can usually keep us from doing good, from doing charity. For example, let's say we have the opportunity to go help somebody. Instead, we start thinking about, oh, but I have to do this other thing. Oh, but I have to do this other thing. And a lot of times, these other things that we think we have to do are selfishness acts that are preventing us from going out there and helping out. Again, I go back to this exercise of standing in awe of nature, of people, ourselves, can lead us to become more altruistic people. So if we're struggling with helping others, if we're struggling to break that barrier to go out and do something in helping others, standing in awe can help us bridge that gap. And on paragraph 8, he says, even if all the external elements are against the action you develop, it is perfectly possible to keep your own serenity as long as you know how to understand people and situations, leaving them where they are and moving forward with the work that is your responsibility. So first, in this first passage, in the first part of the sentence, Emmanuel is telling us, even if all external elements are against the action you develop, it is perfectly possible to keep your own serenity. Again, seems to be the theme of the day. External elements cannot influence the virtues that we have profoundly developed. If we're developing our peace, if we're developing our love, if we're developing our serenity based on a rock, based on the way that Christ has taught us, external things will not be able to influence that. That's not, no, it's always good to remember that, we have not developed our serenity to the fullest. So obviously we will be affected by external circumstances. But the amount of serenity that we have been able to develop thus far won't be. And the minute we start to realize that, the more we will want to develop that serenity. The more we realize that when troubles are around us and we're able to keep that serenity, that is a sign that we have developed it in good basis, in solid basis. And the second part of this that Emmanuel brings to us is that reflection that it is not our responsibility to drag people to evolve. He's saying us, leaving them where they are and moving forward with the work that is your responsibility. Realizing that it isn't our responsibility to evolve others. Our responsibility is to evolve ourselves. And in doing so, part of our own evolution is charity, so that we can help others find their evolution, find their way. But we can't do it for them, because that's something untransferable and something that belongs to each and every one of us. Jesus even told that to Peter when Peter was wondering, who's going to betray you? He said, this does not relate to you at all. You follow me. Let me deal with that. So he was inviting Peter to focus on himself and not to divert his way. And then on chapter 9, he says, peace in us, we repeat, is born from understanding in service, and understanding in service is maintained by tolerance for the mistakes of others, and even by self-acceptance of our own mistakes, so that we know how to correct them without turmoil and waste of time. I always love when Emmanuel, when André Luiz, when Joanna bring us the idea of self-acceptance. I myself is something that I have a huge focus on that, because I'm not very good at it, where we don't realize the importance of self-acceptance and how we might not give enough time to actually accept everything that we've done so far and then move on to improving. So he's telling us here that tolerance for the mistakes of others and our mistakes, for our self-acceptance, is crucial for us to develop our own peace. Because again, if our peace is tied to the things that we do right, and our peace is bothered by the things that we do wrong, it's going to be very tough to find peace. But if we learn to accept, and from acceptance, we can move on to repenting, we can move on to course correction, we can find peace. But if we don't accept, we'll fall into the guts of guilt, of turmoil, and those make us stall instead of progress. And so, to end it all, Emmanuel brings us the reflection that, in short, as long as we do not know how to forgive, we will not be free to submit to the practice of good according to the laws of God. This is really powerful. This is really important. He says that if we don't know how to forgive, we cannot free ourselves to practice good. Why? Because when we're not forgiving, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier today. When we can't forgive, we're letting anger, we're letting hatred, we're letting discord, we're letting turmoil derail us from the path of love. And forgiving somebody means freeing ourselves from that hatred, freeing ourselves from that discord, freeing ourselves from that turmoil. And in that freedom, we can find love. In that freedom, we can find practices of good, like Emmanuel is telling us. And if we go to, I believe it's chapter 5 in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus invites us to he doesn't use the word forgive, and I forget now, but he says to reconcile, I believe. He says, reconcile with your adversaries while you have time. Because if you don't, that will take you to prison. And Christ is telling us here that, if we don't forgive somebody while we have time, while that person is there with us, that anger that's within us will take us to prison, will take us to jail. So when we work towards forgiveness, when we work towards forgiving others, we'll be freeing us from that, like Christ has told us. And so that is all we wanted to bring, because in that freedom, we can find our peace. In the peace, in the tranquility of our conscience is where we can find our peace. And just before I end, just one exercise here, or a couple exercises that we get, that hopefully you got from this talk. The first one was reflecting upon the things that we have accomplished today. That was our duty for today. So reflect upon one lesson that we have learned today. And that can bring us the sense that we accomplished our duty. And when we accomplish our duty, we can feel tranquility in our conscience. And when we can feel tranquility in our conscience, we can feel peace. We can start to build peace. And the second one is the exercise to stand in awe. Stand in awe, a bird that we see. Stand in awe of the sun. Stand in awe in the snow. Stand in awe when we see other people. That is a great exercise. And hopefully you can feel how great that is. So that's all I wanted to bring today. And thank you, Anna. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Sonia, for being here. And all those who haven't said anything, but thank you. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you for your reflections and for your comments. So in closing, I would like to close our eyes. And breathe. Realize that this moment in communion with Jesus is a wonderful moment. realizing that when we think about Jesus, when we are in communion with him, we can feel peace. We can feel serenity. And that is a great opportunity for us to stand in awe of the power of love. How the power of love, how the power of Christ's love can change the way we feel so quickly. So, dear Lord, dear Christ, we ask you for your help in us building our inner peace, building our peace of mind, building our happiness. We thank you for the words that you have shared with us today, for the wisdom that you have shared with us. And we ask for the strength to keep working, to keep serving, and hopefully keep using your compass that guide us to love, to peace, to serenity. Because your heart is meek, your heart is humble. And as apprentices of you, you can give us the ease, you can give us the subtlety of your yoke and of your path. Thank you, and so be it. Thank you all again, and I hope you have a wonderful Sunday, and we'll see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Calgary time.